All right, and welcome back to another episode of Phrasing FM, a podcast where I talk about languages and my experience building an app to learn them. Today, I want to just rant a little bit about a comment I received somewhere on YouTube, because I get these comments a lot, and I always wish I could just highlight how ridiculous they are. And I realized that if I'm going to have a podcast, this is where I should be highlighting how ridiculous they are. So this is just going to be a little rant session. If you are a comprehensible input purist, prepare to be enraged. And if you are a space repetition purist, prepare to be enraged with me. There's rage for everyone. If you're a normal, healthily adjusted adult, what are you doing on YouTube? All right. Anyways. The comment, let's see, it was somebody basically saying, what would it take you to be convinced that flashcards don't help at all in language? Which I find that to be just a ridiculous framing, because I've learned Portuguese through just flashcards. What do you mean? Like, what would it take to convince you that something that does work doesn't work? Like, you can't, like, if it's been proven to work, then you're not going to prove me otherwise. And so I responded to this basically just, I've actually learned, let's see if I can find I've learned a language to B1 level using just flashcards, enough to talk with natives and make friends in a language who don't speak English. Pretty basic reply. Like, it's just, this is a non-issue. You don't have to like flashcards. You don't have to use spaced repetition. But there's this idea in the comprehensible input crowd that, like, they just don't work flat out. Despite tens of thousands, millions of people around the world learning languages with flashcards very successfully, they just don't work because Stephen Krashen says so. And it's just baffling to me that this pops up all the time. So I just leave this response like, it has worked. What do you mean? What evidence do you need to prove it doesn't? Like, what evidence do you need to prove it does, besides it actually working for people? It's one person learning a language with flashcards in the entire world proves they work. There's just no evidence to prove they don't. Anyways, this response I thought was just glorious. And so I guess I'll just go through piece by piece. Were you tested in a B1 exam? Is out the gates, which I was not. I would guess I will give them that. But you don't need to be tested in all of these. I mean, I guess if I wanted to claim this in a job interview, fine. But I'm trying to give a frame of reference for where my language is. I have no interest in taking CEFR exams. I also know a ton of people who have really high exam levels who speak terrible versions of the language. So it's a really bad metric for judging somebody's language skills. But it's like, I'm trying to say lower intermediate. And again, like, the more important part of that sentence was that I communicated with natives and I made friends in the language. Like, I had friends who just spoke Portuguese and not English. And I lived with a Brazilian. He'd invite a bunch of Portuguese and Brazilian people over for dinners, and I could understand what they were talking about, and I could participate in the conversations. Like, these are not self or like heavily adapted conversations to involve me. These are conversations amongst native speakers that I could partake in. Like, this roughly a B1. I don't know what you want from that. Did your flashcards contain comprehensible input? Which is a really, really fantastic way to put this. Now, in phrasing, I do often say that the flashcards are comprehensible input. They combine space repetition and language acquisition. My definition for that is that the flashcards need to be of a certain length to the point where you forget how the flashcard started by the time you get to the end of the flashcard for it to be considered comprehensible input. Now, comprehensible input has no real definition. The only definition of comprehensible input is input that you learn a language from. So if you learn the language, it's comprehensible input. If you didn't, then it's not comprehensible input. So I guess they did contain comprehensible input because I learned the language from it. But I would say no. These are very short sentences. This was a pre-built deck. This was nothing done on my own. What did the flashcards look like? I used Linguist. It was, like I said, pre-built deck, close completion, short sentences, all over the board, not really thematic. Were you talking to the natives without thinking about the language, speaking correctly and fluently without conscious effort? That is, without using the monitor. I mean, this is also just remarkable. If you know anybody who claims to be at a B1 level, speaking correctly and fluently without conscious effort, they're lying to you. They're- that's, I mean, that's like probably a C1 level, maybe a high B2 level. But like that's a B1 level is pretty choppy. Go YouTube videos, like look up videos of people speaking at a B1 level. It is incredibly conscious. It is incredibly using the monitor. I don't care how you learn the language. Like you will be thinking about what you're saying if you are speaking at a B1 level. That's not a high. You're just making sentences is punching above your weight. Like it's it's not fluent. It's not all correct, and it's definitely not without conscious effort. Like that, you are defining the pinnacle of linguistic achievement for a lower intermediate level. Then there's I think that memorizing a language and actually learning a language are very different things. Again, memorizing a language is a remarkable concept. I mean, that is like memorizing uh, the Conte Monte Cristo, like times a million. Just now, because you've used spaced repetition, which is no different than any other form of learning, it's just a different interface. Like language acquisition is just exposure to organic spaced repetition. This is just algorithmic spaced repetition. But now this is memorizing the entire language. But I think memorizing a language and actually learning a language are very different things. I would agree. I just don't think you can memorize a language. I think memorization is a part of learning, and learning is there are different things, but memorizing is a part of learning. You memorize things when you watch input. Like this is, what are we talking about here? One is an artificial use of the language where you have to contrive your sentences. The other is a natural use of the language where you speak automatically and improvise. Again, like I think I learned English the right way. I mean, I'm a native speaker, and according to him, there's clearly a right way and a wrong way to learn a language. I didn't memorize English according to his language. I learned English. Um, I have to think about and contrive my sentences all the time. I mean, not every single sentence, obviously, but to pretend like you either know something in a way where you can just implicitly know exactly what you want to say at all points versus the other one where you have to be naturally or artificially contriving your sentences at all points is just not, that's not how any of this works. That's not how language works. And also, I've been learning Arabic with just spaced repetition now, and I've only done about 40 hours over the past year of Arabic, less than an hour a week of study, and 100% with flashcards. And I am able to have off-the-cuff conversations with Arabic speakers. Now, obviously, they're very limited. I don't, they're limited to just the topics that I've been studying on the flashcards. But I'm not using sentences that I memorized. I'm not thinking about the conjugations of different words. I'm not, I'm able to understand the responses without pausing and repeating it back to me and thinking about every word. Like I say what comes to mind. There is no monitor, and the people understand what I'm saying, and then they respond, and I understand what they're saying. Like it doesn't matter how I learned the information, whether I did it watching a movie or clicking around on a screen or reading a book or doing a grammar drill. Like it's this idea that like you learn the language not even incorrectly, because that actually means something, but like the fact that this information is corrupted. You learned it in a corrupted fashion. Um, like if I can speak and understand and not have any issues, how did I learn it wrong? Anyways, we'll continue. And there's no such thing as automating memorized language into natural language. Your neural pathway responses will never be the same as the ones of someone who learned the language naturally, aka implicitly. So this one is interesting. One, I agree. There's no way of automating memorized language. I don't think we get to be good at a language just by remembering it slowly and then remembering it faster and faster until it's eventually so fast. Like you don't just conjugate something, you have to think about it, and you get so fast at conjugating that you just conjugate off the cuff. Like that your processing time is 0.000 milliseconds, and you can just conjugate at native speed. Like that's I don't think anybody thinks that's how language works. But memorizing can be super helpful. And you do have to memorize a bunch of things. And I don't think that language, that knowledge then gets automated, but that gives you like a scaffold for your brain to boot up from. And so, I mean, personally, I think if you memorize it, you're just going to learn it faster. I do think it is probably a separate process to learn it. But I do think memorization is also just part of the pathways. Like it just gives you hooks to save your memories on. And then, yeah, your neural pathways will never be the same as somebody who learned it a different way. I mean, one of the things that drives me crazy about this is like, this is implying I have permanent damage. That if you don't learn a language in my way, you will never be the same. And it's just the condescension and the arrogance of this, that like, I know the correct way to learn a language and everybody else is doing permanent damage to themselves by not following my method, is just ridiculous. I mean, utterly ridiculous. But then also, this sentence means nothing. Because, of course, if you learn something differently, it's not going to be the same as somebody who learned it different. Like that's how neurons work. Like if you learn to ride, first of all, any two people who learn something, the same thing, the same way, they will have neural pathways that will never be the same as one another. Like all of our brains are unique. None of us are using the same neural pathways, even if we use the exact same methods. And then on top of that, yes, if you use different methods, you will activate different parts of your brain and you will build different neural pathways, which I'm not a neuroscientist. This is above my knowledge of talking about specific neural pathways, and I'm relatively confident it's also above this person's pay grade as well. But just the idea that like, no, if you do it in the right way, then you'll use the right neural pathways. So like, I learned a language correctly, but I used the wrong neural pathways to do so. And therefore, I didn't learn the language? Like, despite the fact, having friends in a language, speaking it, understanding what's going on around me, contributing to conversations, like communicating, the whole point of learning a language, like it doesn't count as learning a language because I use different neural pathways than the ordained ones. Like other people might use different neural pathways that are more closer to neural pathways that I like to use. Therefore, anybody like it's amazing how nothing at all this is saying, and also just how ridiculous this is on the face, where it's like you learned the language correctly, but in the wrong part of your brain. So you're ruined forever. It's just it grinds my feathers because I mean, apparently it takes 15 minutes to talk about these 4 sentences and just how ridiculous they are. But yeah, I mean, I make a lot of comments as somebody who's building a flashcard spaced repetition application. I get a lot of hate for using spaced repetition and stuff. So I feel like this channel is probably going to become like 50% T. Just giving myself an outlet to laugh at some of these ridiculous comments that people seem to have about language learning. Because here's the real truth: if you don't want to use spaced repetition, you don't have to. If you don't want to use comprehensible input, you don't have to. If you don't want to use textbooks, you don't have to. Like, there's so many different ways to learn a language. There are benefits and pros and cons to each one of them. And yeah, however you like to learn languages, you can. I mean, another hot take: no matter how you learn a language, you are going to use spaced repetition. You might not want to use flashcards and you might not want to use an algorithm, but all learning is going to be spaced repetition. If you're doing language acquisition, comprehensible input, you're just relying on organic spaced repetition. If you're using a textbook, you're relying on predetermined spaced repetition. did the textbook authors. They probably spaced out words throughout the exercises to grow the vocabulary and help you remember them. And if you use flashcards, you're using algorithmic spaced repetition. If you talk with the tutor, you're going to be using organic spaced repetition with some monitor spaced repetition in there. Like all learning is spaced repetition. And so so you will have to use spaced repetition. But if you don't want to use flashcards, if you don't want to use algorithms, that's fine. Guess what? You're still going to learn the language correctly. And if you don't want to learn through comprehensible input, guess what? You're still going to learn the language correctly. Like it is so bizarre to me to like claim there to be a correct way to learn a language, and not like this method is correct, but this method is the only one that teaches you the correct way. This is the only one that allows you to use your correct neurons to learn. Don't you use those other neurons. I see you using other neurons other there. Those other neurons are not allowed. Those other neurons aren't language neurons. You're using the wrong neurons, buddy. You don't speak the language. You didn't learn it because you're not using these neurons. It's just ridiculous. Anyways, that's my episode for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. I hope everybody is equally infuriated, and a couple of you guys had a good couple laughs. If you are a CI purist, leave a comment down below explaining why I'm wrong, and I will respond to your comment next. If you do like spaced repetition, consider checking out Phrasing. It's an application that I've been building now for over 3 years. I've been using it now every day for over a year. It's a way to combine spaced repetition and language acquisition, and just makes it a whole lot more efficient to learn 1 language, 2 language, 10 languages, however many you want to learn. You can learn them all in Phrasing. Give it a what do I want to say? Give it a look and give it a try, and I hope to see you there. And with that, if you like this video, like, subscribe, share with your polyglot friends, and I will catch you all in the next episode. Ciao.